Welcome in, everybody. Another episode of the Gramblers podcast, episode 4 to be exact. I'm Cody Grant, along with Aaron Graff, as we dive into everything betting wise when it comes to sports. Busy week last week. We didn't really get a video out, but we're back again this week. How you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Got a nice little win last night. Clippers minus 3.5 as they try to get back to the series. Now down 2-1. They would be the first team in NBA history to come back from 2-0 counts if they do upset the Jazz here in round two. So looking forward to that. But lots to talk about today. A lot of NBA moving forward. A lot of U.S. Open talk as that comes up this weekend. Also going to talk about live betting and shopping the books. So Aaron's going to give us thoughts on that and then talk about his Vegas Golden Knights bet. So we're going to update on that one as well. Recording this on a Sunday at about 12:26 p.m. So let's get right into it, Aaron. NBA playoffs has been so fun. We keep mentioning that every time on this podcast. A lot of different faces, though, of course. No more LeBron James, no more Steph Curry. It really seems like this is the time for the new age of basketball players to really start showing up. I mean, we're seeing what Devin Booker could do in Phoenix. We're looking over at Trae Young in Atlanta. Obviously, Brooklyn's big three or big two right now because Harden's not playing anymore. A lot of fun basketball to go. I mean, what's been your most exciting series so far?
Uh, Most exciting series. I think I've liked what the Clippers have been exciting all through. The Dallas Clippers series was exciting. Everybody kind of counted them out after they lost the first two in Dallas, and then obviously they dropped the first two to Utah as well. So I feel like they're the most exciting team to watch, but it's just because they're so inconsistent partially. I mean, you get playoff Paul and but the guy I'm really liking a lot more throughout his career is Joel Embiid. I think he's a future MVP type of player. Obviously, there's so much parity in the league where a couple of years ago I would have said, "Hey, Kawhi Leonard will win an MVP at some point." He still hasn't, so up in the air, if he will. I wouldn't ever bet that or anything, but really liking his development, really like watching his heart and watching him basically grow that franchise alongside Ben Simmons, who's I think kind of that 1A or I'm sorry 1B type player. So
Yeah, definitely. I love your take on Clippers Mavericks. That was one of the most fun series I've seen in a long time, being in the first round. Sucks that Luka's not in the second round. We both are huge fans of him. But Kawhi, he gets the job done when he's needed to. We've seen it time and time again in his career. A couple of games on the slate here on Sunday. We, of course, have Game 4, Nets and Bucks. Nets were able to win ugly in Game 3, which would make a 90s basketball fan blush watching that game, as ugly as it was. And then Suns and Nuggets. Nuggets look to avoid the sweep. They're down 3-0 against a Suns team that, wow, they made one change, added Chris Paul, and now they're a contender. So good season for them. Nuggets season might end tonight. But let's talk about that Nets-Bucks Game 4. Game 3, as I mentioned, was extremely ugly. 86-83 was the final, I believe. The Bucks offense has been such a problem, and it doesn't even look like their offense in the regular season. They're not passing the ball. They're playing mainly isolation basketball, which goes completely against what they did in the regular season. They averaged 94.6 points per 100 possessions in this series, which is 8 points worse than the Thunder's league worst points per possession. So their offense has been atrocious. Their defense actually has been pretty decent. Instead of Game 2, they've actually been playing the Nets pretty well, but that Game 3, I think, really was an outlier. I picked the Bucks to win that game. I had a good feeling on that game. They did win the money line bet for me, but Durant was 11 of 28 from the field. Joe Harris was 1 of 11 from the field. You don't really see inefficient games like that from Durant. And the Bucks just they can't score. They look lost on offense. Giannis is shooting threes because they're guarding him 15 feet away. When he does get into the paint and he goes to the free throw line, he's not shooting a good percentage. Middleton finally had a great game. He had 35 points, but pretty much he's been kind of a non-factor in games 1 and 2. I don't know how the Bucks come close in Game 4, just because We've seen the same Bucks team through the first three games, whereas game three for the Nets, it was just a lot of outliers. Kevin Durant didn't play well. He didn't shoot good. Joe Harris didn't shoot good. And the Bucks kind of spots, you could say they got pretty lucky. It took a Drew Holiday driving layup just to put them up. They were up 20 in the first quarter. Nets came back like it was nothing. I really like the number. It's Nets -2. I think they're going to cover and they're going to win. They're going to go up 3-1. And another number I'm looking at, I tend to stay away from over-unders. I don't like the over on the game, but I love the under on the Bucks team points at 113.5. I don't see them getting to 113.5 if they continue to play this brand of basketball. And we know Mike Budenholzer is not known for making adjustments. So my favorite bets on this game, Nets -2 and the Bucks team under 113.5.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the Nets covering the spread. Definitely, I like Mike Budenholzer as a coach. Steve Nash, it's kind of tough to gauge him at this point of how good of a coach he is because he inherited basically a really good team. But Steve Nash, the player I knew, was a very great basketball mind, former soccer player, I believe, and was always getting those crazy assists as a point guard. He's one of my favorite point guards of all time. So I'm gonna trust him until he gives me a reason not to as the coach. Especially dealing with like Kyrie Irving saying, I don't think we need a coach, things like that. That's, I don't know. I don't want to say head case, but that's kind of a little insanity. Like somebody needs to be that decision maker. You're not going to, by committee, it's not going to be all players agreeing on one thing or whatever. So I would agree on the Nets spread. I don't know about the Bucks over under. I'd stay away from it personally, just because the Nets defense is not very good this season. Obviously, they didn't score a lot of points, or they didn't give up a lot of points in game three, like you mentioned. So I would tend to lean with you. And obviously, you're very successful so far since we've started this show. So always listen to Cody on your basketball. So
yeah, no, the Bucks were, to your point, they were one of the best offensive teams in basketball this season. But they were one of the most successful offensive teams because they played their brand of basketball. And the reason why the Nets, to your point, are not a good defensive team. KD can lock up when he wants to. Kyrie can kind of play some defense when he wants to. They don't have an interior defender. But the reason why I like that Bucks under, they had 12 assists in game three. They're playing ISO basketball, and that's not a winning formula. Obviously, they won game three, but I think there was a lot more that went into that game three win. To your point about Steve Nash, just to sidetrack a little bit, do you think it's so hard to judge how good a coach is? We talk about Steve Kerr all the time in Golden State. I think Steve Kerr is a tremendous coach, but Mark Jackson really had that team before Kerr got there with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. They were winning a playoff series or two, and Steve Kerr came in, and they, of course, went on to win 3 championships. I think that a lot of times in the NBA, coaches come into a perfect situation. And that's not to say they're a bad coach or they got lucky, but do you think Steve Nash has never been a head coach even at the high school level, more or less NBA. So it's first year and he's been successful, but he's got loads of talent. When you talk about having 3 of the top 15 players in the NBA, maybe you and me can win some games coaching that team.
I would assume so. I feel like we're both good enough sports minds that we probably could. But the difference, I think, between Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr in that particular situation, from what I heard, is Steve Kerr kind of walked in there and was more of a player's coach. He let Steph be Steph. Obviously, Steph is somewhat unconventional of a player because he changed the game. He made the 3 more valuable than the 2, which obviously mathematically it is, but he really made that high percentage of the 3 that it became more valuable to take those 3s. And Steve Kerr kind of rolled with that. He let Steph be Steph. I think Steve Nash is enough of a player's coach too, to where, he is dealing with some egos. Kyrie obviously wanted out of Cleveland to go be the number 1 guy in Boston. Then because he's really good friends with Kevin Durant, they kind of went in there together. Kevin Durant very good player, very confident player, also kind of a jerk about it, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but I'm sure that when, hey, old Steve Nash tells me how to make a move or what shot not to take kind of thing, I'm sure there's probably a little bit of some backlash there. And obviously Steve Nash has a little bit of help too. I mean, I think Mike D'Antoni's an assistant there. Is that right?
Yep.
Which D'Antoni, obviously he's never gotten over that hump, but he's always had very good teams. He was Steve Nash's coach for a large part of his career as well. So Mike D'Antoni's been around the league for a while. I don't think that's going to hurt Steve Nash at all. So it's, like I said, it's hard to gauge, but I think, like I said, I'll trust Steve Nash until he gives me a reason not to. He's dealing with some egos. He's probably letting them be them. And if Brooklyn does win, it'll be interesting to hear what Kyrie has to say. Will Kyrie eat his words and say, like, yeah, Steve Nash was a big part of it? Or will he say, yeah, we could have done this without Steve Nash? I don't think he's going to explicitly say that. So
Kyrie still thinks the earth is flat. I don't think he changes his mind when new information is presented to him.
That's true. That's true. But I don't know what he'll give us and what he'll tell us what he won't. So there's always that aspect. But
and this is a good transition too, because I wanted to follow up on your point about Mike D'Antoni. Like a lot of time in his career, when he was coaching the Knicks and he wasn't having any success, people were calling him a bad coach. I don't think D'Antoni's a bad coach. He's actually an offensive genius, but he needs the pieces to run his offense. And we saw it in Phoenix when he had Nash, Amari, Marion, Joe Johnson, how effective they were. And in that series against the Spurs, I'm sure you know really well, where you had that little scrum on the sideline when who was it? Was it Ori that body checked Steve Nash into the wall?
Yeah, I think that was game one where Steve Nash messed his nose up, and then down the road, somebody on the side, I think it was Boris Diaw actually, who was a Spurs good player, like when they made their run in 2014. But I think Boris Diaw had to sit out for a game or two, and somebody else. My dog's barking. I apologize.
No, my dog was barking just a little bit ago, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, he's hearing something. So, hey, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I know there was like technical fouls or ejections or something, and I think two Suns had to sit out for game 4 or something like that, which really just transitioned the series. But yeah, I think it was game 1, and I want to say it was Robert Horry that pushed him into the scorer's table or something like that, and Steve Nash's nose just wouldn't stop bleeding. I mean, it was raw meat basically. So
yeah, it was crazy, but hell of a series. I love watching those Suns Spurs series back in the day. Speaking of the Suns, they have another game today, game 4. They're looking to close out the sweep of the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets, interesting season, of course. They were really had a lot of people that were high in the Nuggets, of course, after last year getting through the Clippers and making it to the Western Conference Finals. But then Jamal Murray goes down, and like, okay, they're not gonna make it. But still a fun team to watch. Jokic is the MVP, one of the best big men in the NBA. But Phoenix, man, has been balling this year. Devin Booker has transitioned into, I don't know if I want to put him this high, but I think he's been like a top 10 player in these playoffs, right? Like he's been that good. DeAndre Ayton has been awesome as young as he is. And I think that can be attributed a lot to how valuable Chris Paul is. He's everywhere he's been in his career. He's elevated his teammates, and he really has been an MVP candidate this year, I believe. Phoenix right now are -3 favorites to win on the road and close out. I really like this game, Aaron, and I'm going to go the other way, though. I think Denver not only covers, but I think they win this game. I don't know if I would bet them on the money line right now. It's +125. You get -110 on the +3 spread. Maybe I might do both of them. Maybe I'll bet them on the +3 and bet them on the money line. I think it's so hard in the NBA, especially for a young team, because minus Chris Paul, they're relatively young and very little playoff experience, to close out a team on the road, especially a team like Denver where they have an MVP and they've been here before. They got to the Western Conference Finals last year, so they have some experience. That Denver crowd's going to be rocking. Phoenix has been poised in these playoffs. I think Phoenix will win in 5. I think Denver wins tonight. I think they cover tonight. I love Denver +3.
I like it. I like your bet for one sole reason. I typically like to bet on law of averages, and it seems like so far almost all of the favorites are covering. I was kind of telling you in our little pre-show, Brooklyn smoked Milwaukee games 1 and 2. Milwaukee and was favored in game 3, and they ended up pushing it. It was a 3-point spread, and I think they won by 3, if I recall. So I think you got to see an underdog cover here soon, because all we've been seeing the last like couple days is the favorites cover, and so that would be the sole reason I bet it. Honestly, I actually, if I was looking at it on paper and I had to pick it, I would take the Suns on the spread, but it's just one of those things where eventually you're going to start seeing things even out. In the grand scheme of things, maybe these playoffs all the favorites cover, and then the next playoffs, next year all the underdogs cover the spreads. You're going to see things like that even out in the grand scheme of things, because Vegas is smart enough to set those lines. So I'll ride with you on that, but for a different and unconventional reasoning.
I love it. I love it. You always want to, we've talked about this before too, especially when you are like on a hot streak and you're winning a lot. Sometimes it is beneficial to like kind of go against what you think is going to happen, just because trends show you're not going to hit on 90% of your bets, obviously, or anything like that. So sometimes you can overthink it, though. There's just so many things that go into it, right? We never really know. We just try and do our best and do good work here.
Those are the ones that make you really mad, though, when you're like, shoot, I knew Phoenix was going to win, but I went against myself because of, this reason or that reason. Those are the ones that make you really mad. When you're thinking one team's going to win and then they don't, you're not as mad if you bet it, because you're like, well, at least I thought they were going to. But when you think and you bet against your own thoughts, those are the ones that make you upset.
And then you get down the road and then you think like a third time, like, well, I didn't go bet against my own thoughts last time. Why should I do it this time? And then you just keep going down this rabbit hole of, now you're on like thought 7, thought 8, thought 9, thought 10. I try to stay as consistent as possible. I realize I'm going to lose sometimes. So if I stay with my same formula and I'm successful with it for a long time, I think longevity is going to have me out on top. So I do think Denver is going to win this game. I really do. I don't think Phoenix is going to win it. I'm going against the trend. I do think Denver is going to win this game, but I'm not taking them on money line. I'm going to take them +3 because Phoenix is hella good and they're better than Denver. But closeout games are tough for young teams. So I'm going with Denver tonight. Now, Monday has 2 games on the docket, 2 series that I think are poised to possibly go 6 or 7 games. Philly and Atlanta. Atlanta's back at home. Philly, of course, won game 3. They had a great run in the third quarter. They outscored Atlanta 34-19. Joel Embiid came up huge. And the problem coming in this series, I picked Philly to win the series. Atlanta just isn't ready for the big moment against a team like Philly. I think it's so tough for Atlanta because they're so undersized. Clint Capella was a great trade for them a year ago. He definitely helps out on the boards and defensively. But your power forward, John Collins, is 6'9". Trae Young is 6'1", 6'2", being guarded by a 6'10" Ben Simmons. Young has showed up. He's been great. I love Young. I think this is his rival year. Of course, we saw him in Madison Square Garden, what he did there. I like Atlanta to bounce back. I think this really is a must-win game for them. I don't think they win this series, but if they lose tonight and go back in a closeout game in Philly, I think they lose in 5. I think Atlanta will be ready for this game. And again, you get plus money on it, +3 on the spread. I'd like Atlanta to cover. I can see this game going down to the wire and being a very close game. And Ben Simmons is a player that I really like, but he is inconsistent offensively. He's not a guy you can really count on. Other than Joel Embiid, I don't think Philly really has a guy you can count on the offensive end. Tobias Harris will show up from time to time again, but he's kind of like Paul George out west. I guess you can compare those 2 players where they're not going to give you what you need every single night. Harris had a nice game 3. I think he kind of falters in game 4. I love Trae Young going off for 30-plus points tomorrow night. So I like Atlanta +3 in this one.
I actually disagree with you on that one. I think Philly's – I'm still hating on the Hawks here. I think that they're still a little bit away. I still think Kevin Herter is absolute
Garbage.
buns, and you've been
You rub
watching him
me over.
more. You've
You rub
been
me over to that side of you though, because I remember like after you said all that crap about Kevin Herter, I was watching the game and he shot, he missed, he shot, he missed. I'm like, holy shit, Aaron's right about this. Like I
yeah
never
he had a
noticed how bad of a shooter he is.
he started I think like 2 for 2, and I think he put up like 15 points in game 2 where Atlanta lost. But that one I was like, man, the world's ending here. So I'm still hating on Atlanta. I mean, I do like Trey Young, I do like John Collins. I agree with you on those. I think that they made a good coaching change in the middle of the season. I hated on them against the Knicks. I'm just gonna ride that out. I think Philadelphia is far and away the better team. I don't really get worried about a game 1 loss. Some people, oh, is it going to turn into an upset? Just because of the game 1 loss, it happens quite a bit. Even for the best teams. I mean, Toronto lost their first game against the Magic when they won the title. San Antonio in 07 lost their first game against the Nuggets in that first round. So
Yeah,
um,
Milwaukee lost their first game against Boston 2 years ago. Miami
yeah,
lost their first game against the Bulls in 2011. It happens so often.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you now, you're thinking it's probably going to come down to the wire. So that 3-point spread gives you a little bit of a comfort, but obviously, there's the ending where, like, let's say Philly's up 1 point with a minute to go and they have possession. Atlanta might be fouling at that point, kind of thing. When it's kind of that comfort of where I guess you would probably set the line as well, do you kind of look more into prop bets at that point as like a different opportunity to make money, or do you kind of look at it as like you're just going to take the points and run?
I look at it as I'm going to take the points and run because I just love betting spreads so much. But NBA is really tough when it comes to spreads, especially close games, to your point, because you see so many times in the end of games, the opposing team, when they're down, they're going to foul. They're going to foul because they want to extend that game and they want to get another shot. But that can work both ways because even let's say there's a line at like 5 points, right? And the opposing team is down by 4 and you pick them to cover the 5 points. And maybe there's like 10 seconds to go. And chances are they're not going to win the game. But every team, especially in the playoffs, are going to fight to the end. Ball gets inbounded, they foul. Guy goes and makes 2 free throws. So now they're down 6 with maybe 7 seconds to go. They come down, they hit a 3. Now it's back to a 3-point game. And then they foul again. And now they're down 5. So like I think it's a lot of fun to watch those games and really sweat it out. I know we've talked about sweating bets on our previous podcast and how I live for it. I love sweating bets. It just makes it more fun to watch the game. And also, too, when you talk about the last 2 minutes of an NBA game, really a lot of it's pretty freaking boring, right? when it's a 5-point game and you just see fouling all the time. So it adds a little bit more fun to that kind of atmosphere. But prop bets, I love betting props on players I like. So Trey Young, for instance, I didn't look up his prop bets. I wasn't going to touch prop bets in this game, but I always like to go Trey Young over on points. Something like that. Luka, I like to go over a lot on points, rebounds, assists combined. Same thing with Jokic. So I look at players I just like to watch, and I tend to pick overs on prop bets when it comes to players because you want to root for them to do good, right? I think that goes back to kind of like betting with my heart more so than my head. So when I bet on spreads, I'm betting with my head. When I bet on player props, I'm more betting with my heart.
Life's too short to bet the under, right?
Yeah, I hate betting unders. I really do. Like, obviously, I did pick the Bucks to under 113.5 because the offense has been atrocious. I think it's an easy win, but I don't like rooting for less points. I'm a millennial. We're watching the 3-point shot. We're watching the offenses in football. I'm pro offense, man. I don't care about defense. Like, look at the Nets. Terrible defense are their favorite to win the NBA championship. It's like offense wins championships.
Is it better betting props in the regular season or the playoffs, though?
I think it's better betting props in the playoffs. You see, historically speaking, big time players increase their numbers when it comes playoff time. And a lot of factors go into that. Obviously, the games are more important. They're playing more minutes more times than not. And they have the ball in their hands more times than not because I don't know what Brooklyn was doing, giving the ball to, who was it, that James guy in the end of game 3. He took like the last 3 shots for them. Like when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So I put that a little bit on Steve Nash. Like, what are you doing? Why is this guy taking shots? He had a nice game. I think he had 16 points. But when it comes to situations like that in the regular season, maybe your star player isn't fully there mentally. It's 82 games in the season this year, of course, 72. But when it comes to playoff time, like, these guys are locked in. So I think their numbers go up. So I think it's better to bet props in the playoffs.
The other aspect, I guess, of that, which we'll kind of get into our topic a little bit more about shopping books. A lot of the times, like when you have, we'll say, let's see, Luka Doncic, for example, the Mavericks are playing a really bad team. They're playing my Spurs. A lot of the times his line would then be higher. So instead of, hey, he's got to score 30 points, he's got to score 35 or over kind of thing. So if you're going to take those overs, yeah, in theory, it's like, okay, well, the Mavericks are going to crush the Spurs because they have the best player on the court. It's a star-driven league. At the same time, a lot of times you see him come short where it's like, okay, he got 34 points there. So personally, I prefer it in the regular season because I do think you get those bad teams usually lose. And I think that, like I said, it's a star-driven league. I can completely respect why you prefer it in the playoffs, but I personally prefer it in the regular season, and definitely prefer spreads in the regular season too, because you can kind of look at travel patterns, things like that, and you can really separate the garbage from the superstars.
Yeah, you remember that the year with the Warriors, 2016, when they won 73 games?
Yeah.
And Steph Curry was sitting out every fourth quarter. Like,
yeah.
It was taught, like you had to bet under Steph Curry points. But then he's the type of player that can put up his player prop bet in 2.5 quarters. So you just never know what's going to happen. But prop bets, like I said, I love betting props on players I like. Like, I'm not going to go out and put a prop bet like on who's a player I don't like. I don't want to call anybody out on the show.
Kevin Huerter.
Kevin, I don't dislike Kevin Huerter. I just don't really watch him.
I'm not going to put any props on Kevin Huerter.
No, I know you will. Well, unders, right? Aren't you going to bet unders?
Well, like I said, a lot of the times with the props, it's like 1.5 threes, and it's like, okay, he's still a shooting guard. There's still a good chance that hits. And
yeah,
if he gets 2 3-pointers, that's 6 points right there. So if they're setting that line at 11, it's like, okay, if he gets fouled on one of them, there's a free throw, which could be 7 points. So it's hard to bet the unders, to be honest, either way with that.
And it's not fun for us because we want to see the overs. We want to see scoring. Like, that game sucked. That game 3, Bucks Nets. I don't know why people like 90s basketball so much. I don't want to see an 86-83 game with like that. Like I said after that game, that was I don't know how I want to preface this, but I think that was the best bad game I've ever seen.
It was entertaining.
Some people called it the worst good game. Like, that was not a good game. That was a terrible game.
Yeah. My buddy, actually, he had money on it the other way than you. He had the Nets, and he was kind of saying the same thing, toward the end of it. He's like, regardless of if I hit this bet, like, what is this, 1986? Like,
it was so bad.
Yeah.
God, it was terrible. But, we'll see what happens game 4. I have no faith in the Bucks. I think they're going to come out the same way. I think they're going to play great defense, as they always do, because defense really isn't a thing you need to make adjustments on. That's all effort and just knowing your rotations, which they know. But offensively, I mean, PJ Tucker's giving you nothing. Their bench is giving you nothing. There's nothing from Connaughton. There's nothing from Bryn Forbes. He was great in the Miami series, but he's not doing anything in this Brooklyn series. Really, your only offense is Giannis at the top of the key, driving to the basket, hoping he doesn't get fouled, and then Middleton doing his little mid-range jumpers from the left wing and right wing. I don't know why they don't go back to the pick and roll with Middleton and Giannis. They ran one play in the fourth quarter of game 3. Middleton was at the top of the key. Giannis set the pick. And Middleton had a wide open mid-range jumper he hit from about 20 feet. Like, I don't know what they're doing, why they're not going to that play every single time. It's almost unstoppable if you get a switch on Giannis in the post or you get Middleton around that corner. He's money from 20 feet. They just kept going to isolation basketball, and I expect the same tonight because Budenholzer doesn't really make adjustments. So I think Brooklyn goes up 3-1. That's why I picked Brooklyn -2.
Yeah, and I apologize for moving around there. I was having some technical difficulties, so had to find a different outlet. So
No worries. Yeah, we are recording this on Zoom. Aaron, of course, is in Iowa. I am in Wisconsin. So, we work with the technology that's given to us.
we work on corn-fed internet. So
Pretty much, right? Midwest internet. Oh, it's terrible.
yeah,
One more game on the docket I want to talk about as it comes to NBA, Clippers and Jazz. This has been a fun series. Jazz, they're better than the Mavericks. Is that safe to say?
I think top to bottom, definitely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like they don't have Luka, but they got Donovan Mitchell who can score like Luka.
They got Rudy
Shooting,
Gobert, who's a
yeah,
defensive god.
he Gobert gives you way more than Kristaps Porzingis. I'll say that.
I wait. Well, I'm sorry. What was that?
Gobert gives you way more than
Oh,
you get from Kristaps
yes, absolutely,
Porzingis.
absolutely. He doesn't
Like it's not
score,
even,
not
yeah,
as not much of a scorer, but yeah,
no.
absolutely, way more valuable to the team.
And
I,
then
I
with
thought you were saying the other way around for a second.
oh
I was
hell
like,
no,
wait a
no.
second, hold on, let's cancel
Dallas
the
has to
show
get
right
rid
now.
of Porzingis, man. That guy's trash for what he's
Yeah,
getting paid. He's trash. Gobert, he's the best defensive player in the league. Just what he gives you, and I go back to this because I had a conversation. I know we're kind of off topic here, but Ben Simmons was getting a lot of love for Defensive Player of the Year, and I like Ben Simmons, and he's a terrific perimeter defender, but he's not going to affect the game as much as Rudy Gobert. It's just a factual statement because if Ben Simmons is guarding one guy on the perimeter, and that guy gets past Ben Simmons, Simmons isn't going to be the guy to recover. The center is the one that's going to slide over. So whereas Ben Simmons is guarding one player at a time, Gobert is really guarding five. He may be on the center, but he's always going to come over and protect the paint, get those blocks from the weak side. So well deserved. And we talked about too, it's amazing how much the game is growing internationally. We can't say enough about it. You have Jokic MVP, Giannis two-time MVP, Luka Doncic is going to be the face of the league, and Gobert from France, a three-time Defensive Player of the Year. And all these guys are, except for Luka right now, but playing big-time minutes in the playoffs. So it's cool to see the international game growing as much as it is. But Utah, man, they're stacked from up to down. I'm not a huge believer in Utah. I said this on Facebook the other night. I picked the Clippers actually to cover game 2. I was wrong about that, but I bounced back with the Clippers win last night on game 3. So I don't like the spread, though. It's 4.5. I think it's going to be a closer game. Utah just has so many shooters from top to bottom, and they're a better built roster than the Clippers because the Clippers roster isn't built that good. Other than Kawhi and Paul George, they have a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of question marks. I mean, when Reggie Jackson's your starting point guard in the playoffs, you're going to have some problems. Utah, man, they got Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, 2 guys that you could have give 6 Man of the Year awards to. Just shooters all over the place. And Mitchell, if he keeps playing like this, man, that guy is not getting a lot of credit. We always talk about Luka. We always talk about Devin Booker. But Donovan Mitchell, man, he can score on anybody. But I do expect Kawhi to start guarding him a lot more moving forward.
yeah. Mitchell is kind of the guy I was definitely wrong about. He's a guy who I definitely thought was overrated after his rookie year because he did have those games where he was not putting up points. I know this because I bet on them. I would bet overs like, oh yeah, he's going to score at least 21 points tonight. And he would have 0 through 3 quarters, or he'd have 1 point through 3 quarters. And I was like, well, throw that bet ticket away. This guy's buns. This guy shouldn't be an all-star. And then he really, last year, I was watching him a little bit more closely, and I was like, yeah, this dude's legit. And I was definitely wrong. I ate my words. As far as what the Clippers are, I think that they're kind of the Cubs between 2017 to 2019. They're built on stars and scrubs, basically. I do think Tyronn Lue is a respectable coach. I do think Kawhi
Oh,
Leonard is
yeah.
the best player in this series. And I do think Paul George is a legitimate player. I mean, even though he hasn't always shown up in the playoffs. But that's the thing. That's what makes this series tough. That's what makes it interesting. I do think it's a star-driven league. I did say that the Clippers would win the West on episode 1, and I tend to kind of just stick to my guns and say, yeah, like they'll still win the West. But like you said, Jazz are just, they're the deepest team I think that still stands. And that's how my Spurs typically won their titles, was they were built to have those second lines come in and put up points and, get stops. I think that, Kawhi Leonard can't play all 48 minutes of the game, especially he just got taken to 7 games in the last series. So they're more tired than Utah is, or they should be at least anyway. Maybe sometimes you get that second wind of energy, but it's a tough one. It's one that I wouldn't bet either. I agree with you that those spreads are going to probably be pretty close because that's what Vegas is looking at. Kawhi is probably the best player. At least up to now. Mitchell might be a better player than Kawhi within 5 years, but I think at least up to now, Kawhi is the best player. Utah's the better team. Take your pick.
Yeah, I like the Clippers to win game 2. I think they're going to tie the series at 2-2, especially on the home floor. I just don't like the 4.5 spread. And I don't know if I see enough value in the money line. It's minus 190 right now. Donovan Mitchell, though, he did tweak his ankle in game 3. He says he's okay, but that's something to look at as well as we move closer. I may take a look at the line to see if it shifts anytime before tip-off. If I got that line down to like 3.5, I think I would be comfortable taking the Clippers, but 4.5 just seems a little high to me. I think it's going to be a close game. But if that money line moves down maybe to like minus 170, then maybe I'll put some money on the Clippers money line. But I'll keep you up to date on that. But right now, I don't have a pick for this game.
Sure. Which brings us to our betting topic of the day.
I know you were really excited for this. You texted me about it. This is something that you love to do. This is where your expertise comes in, why I love doing this podcast with you. Because talking about one thing that we talked about, our vision of this podcast, isn't just picking games. It's also informing and educating on betting. And this is where you come in perfectly. So Aaron, tell us about shopping books, man.
Yeah, so shopping books is important. Like you kind of just mentioned there, the spreads, the 3.5, 4.5, that extra point at, the lines basically. So there's always going to be the line that Vegas sets. Minus 110 on the spread, for example, means you have to bet $110 to win 100 based off of their spread. A lot of the times, though, there are always multiple sports books that you can choose from. So DraftKings is going to have their option. William Hill is going to have their option. MGM is going to have their option. And those lines sometimes differentiate. So, for example, I like to bet golf a lot. We're going to talk about the U.S. Open. I was kind of eyeballing Abraham Answer as a value pick. DraftKings has their line out for the U.S. Open already, which is next weekend. He's plus 5,000, which means you bet $100. If he wins the tournament, you profit $5,000. That doesn't mean bet that right away, because the thing is, William Hill might have it at plus 6,000, which is, a whole $1,000 difference. Or let's say you're only betting $1, it's still $10 difference of profit. And then another book might have it at plus 7,000, meaning, okay, then you get $2,000 more per every $100 you bet if he wins. Obviously, you could still lose the $100 outright anyway. But so shopping the books is kind of important. Don't just take what's on the surface, basically. And that also extends to spreads, because sometimes, like you said, if it's 3.5 versus 5.5, you get those 2 points of extra comfort. So if both lines are the same, as betting lines are the same, minus 110, and one book gives you 5.5 points and one book gives you 3.5 points to work with, depending on which way you're betting it, obviously you want that extra little blanket. Usually Vegas is going to be pretty close on their lines. One of the sports book is probably really, really close. So if one of them's 5.5 and one of them's 3.5, don't be surprised if it's 4.5 or 4-point game, basically. And at that point too, if you think it's going to be exactly a 4-point game, you can bet it at both books and then, hope for it being a 4-point game. That's kind of opening a window is what it's called. But that's a very narrow window. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that anyway, but at that point, you're definitely not going to lose everything. Basically, you're guaranteed if you have that little window. So, but I like shopping books definitely, just because that's where your money can kind of come into play as far as, okay, this one's going to give me more money if I bet with them. They give you different promotions and stuff too. I mean, some they want to attract bettors. So sometimes it's like DraftKings occasionally does like the hammer the over bets, and it's like, will there be more than 0 points scored in this game? And you can only bet $25 max on that, but obviously you're going to put that $25 on it every time. Let's say William Hill has a separate bet where it's like, will the Brooklyn Nets beat um a college basketball team that they play in an exhibition game on the money line, and they'll give you even money there. So sometimes you take those bets as well. So just shopping the books, just finding the best line. One other example I'll give, I know I'm kind of ranting here, and I'll kind of wrap this up. You do sometimes get your friends who want to bet you. Be careful when they want to bet you, because usually they've already looked at the sports book and they're just trying to boost their odds. For example, the Bears were heavy underdogs against the Packers in week 17 this past NFL season. And one of my Packers friends, he tried reaching out to me. He's like, hey, I'll bet you $20 the Packers win, and he was wanting that even money. And I said, I will literally never take that bet, because I can bet it through a casino, which is backed, secure. Like I could bet him and he could say like, he could go off the face of the earth from me and I could never hear from him again. But I would literally never take that bet, because the thing is, okay, the sports book there is offering me $40 for every $20 I bet. So why would I bet it with, an individual friend? So more times than not, you're going to want to just bet through the casino or the sports book outright. And there's probably a dozen different sports books you can bet. It gets exhausting to read through all of them. Usually they're going to be pretty close. So, I mean, once you find one you like, maybe you look at two different sports books and you just take the better one there.
Or to piggyback off your point about your friend asking you to bet Packers Bears, take that opportunity to teach them what a spread is, and then get them into betting again. So
he knew. He knew.
Oh, he knew.
He knew.
He was trying to get you to do that.
He said, "All you Bears fans are the same." I was like, "Yeah, I guess we're smart."
Yeah. Nobody's ever that's another thing too. It's like, if you ever get offered by a friend, now this could be on the flip side. Like, let's say you have, I don't know, like maybe like a Titans fan friend, and you're talking big about the Chiefs or something, and he's like, I bet you Titans win this game. $50 Titans beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs are favored by 4.5. Take it. And don't give him the spread if he's offering you that. Like, and I don't think that's a bad thing to do. It's like, but it's like, if you guys just offering you straight money on a bet, always take the favorite. Always take the favorite.
Yeah, you take that every time, because the other thing you can do. So, for example, William Hill had a promotion. It was the Suns even money against the Nuggets to win on the money line. So you could bet $25 on that, which I did. And I was like, I could see Denver winning this game. So then I bet the $25 on Denver at plus money, meaning, you're going to obviously profit more than you bet. And I just basically rooted for Denver. I was like, if Denver wins, I'm going to get like $18 profit off that, $25. If Phoenix wins, I'm not losing anything. So even if you think he might be onto something about the Titans beating the Chiefs at that point, you still take that bet, because you can still hedge it and take the Titans on the money line in the sports book. I mean, it's just a way of making money with no risk, essentially, or you break even. That's all it is, basically.
That's a big thing too with betting, and this goes back to always saying bet with your head, not with your heart, because you can find value in a lot of betting. Like Aaron and I just a few minutes ago talked about how we're not betting the Jazz Clippers game because we don't see value in it. Even though I think the Clippers will win, there's not a lot of value in minus 190 if I took them on the money line. So waiting for that number to maybe go down, and if it doesn't, just stay away from it. You don't have to bet on everything. I do bet a lot of NBA though, but I mean, it's a playoff, so why not? But that goes to a good transition, live betting. You can find a lot of value in live betting. On our pre-show, I was telling you about how I really liked the Bucks to win Game 3, and the spread was -3 for Milwaukee. I didn't like them to cover that. I liked them on the money line. But that's one of those games where, so I like the Bucks to win, but I didn't like them on -3. So when they go out to that big 20-point lead in the first quarter, that's a perfect opportunity to hammer Brooklyn's line. because that's moving up. Now, instead of it being +3 pregame, now they're down 20 in the first quarter. That line's moving up to like +6, +7, +8, +9. So one of my strategies with live betting, and of course, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. One thing I love to do is find a favorite that I like, especially during NFL, and wait for the other team to score first. If it doesn't happen, then you just stay away from that game. But more times than not, you do see the underdog come out early and put up some points before the favorite, and then you can get even better odds on that favorite. So that's something that you can really be successful with because in any sport, it doesn't matter who scores first. It really doesn't. Football, there's 60 minutes to play. Basketball is 48 minutes to play. We always see runs. I was just watching the replay of a game last night, Bucks and Chargers from the regular season, where the Chargers went up 21-10 or something like that, and Tampa Bay ended up winning by 14 or something. So it happens a lot. The better team usually comes out on top.
Yeah, definitely with basketball. Basketball is definitely a game of runs. At one point, I think this season, I got the Pelicans plus 37.5. They were down 37.5. They were down so much to where it's like, okay, are they going to lose by 37 or less? I'm going to say yes. They'll go on at least a little bit of a run. I think they were down 44 or something at the time. Yeah. I mean, it was one of their worst games of the year, but it's like, yeah, they're going to at least get on a little bit of a run here. And they did. I mean, it was like they lost, I think, by like 30 or something like that in that game. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's still a big loss. But when you give, you're never going to find that line at the beginning of the game. It's never going to be even money or close to even money at, a 37.5 point spread. I don't care if it's the best team in the NBA versus the worst team in the NBA. Those lines are usually probably going to be around like 15
like 11,
points.
12.
Yeah, 11, 12, 15 at max, I would say. NFL, probably, I think the biggest line I've ever seen was like 28 points, 4-point. That was when it was Peyton Manning's Broncos when he was still really good versus the Jaguars. And I think the Jaguars covered that spread, but it's not like, it's not like you're going to find that like 35-point spread in an NFL game unless it's on a live bet. A team goes up 2 touchdowns and then Vegas kind of like, oh, shoot, like, this team is really good. Like, we kind of underestimated it. Sometimes that spread moves. Part of the problem, I guess, with the favorites. So I guess one of the trickier things is, like, let's say an NBA team is favored by 7 points and they go down, we'll say 10 points after the first quarter. A lot of the times they're still a betting favorite. So they're still like -2 or -3 or just, pick them. So, I mean, that still gets kind of tricky because it's like, well, they still have a lot to overcome. I do like betting the underdogs live a little bit better just because, instead of going from +7, let's say the better team goes out to the early run, now they're +15 or something like that. So I do like that a little bit better than betting the favorites live, but you never know. You're going to see value sometimes if you watch the game, if you're paying attention. If you're seeing a team of 5 Kevin Huerters versus a team of 5 Steph Currys, bet the favorite live because they're going to keep scoring, and Vegas probably undervalued that bet. But live betting, there's definitely probably a little bit more value, especially for the popular sports, because, like I said, at the end of the day, also, along with the better team usually coming out on top, Vegas is usually not super far off. Vegas hires a lot of people to set those spreads. NFL is almost always extremely close. Basketball games, sometimes you see a basketball game get away. NFL, you'll sometimes see spreads you don't understand. Like the Broncos last year hosted the Dolphins, and the Dolphins were clearly a better team throughout the year, but it was like the Broncos were favored by like 3 points. And they covered, and it's just, you have to consider Tua being a rookie, going into that altitude, different things like that. A lot of the times those spreads that, they seem too good to be true are what are called traps. And you can find value there as well. So.
Absolutely. And going back to the live betting portion with NBA and NFL, I think it's a lot easier with NFL as far as strategy goes. with NFL, I mentioned I like to hammer a live bet after a first touchdown, but NBA is a little trickier because a team can go on it like the Nets and the Bucks. I'll go back to that game 3. The Bucks had a great first quarter, and that was the time to bet the Nets after that first quarter. But when you're watching that game, the Bucks go up by 10 with maybe 6 minutes to go in the first. You're thinking, oh, should I place this bet now or should I wait? What's your strategy when live betting NBA and NFL?
Yeah, so with a lot of live betting or even sometimes betting in general, there are some sports books that also offer you a cash out. So basically, let's say you bet over 208 points or so in a NBA game, meaning it should be like a 104, or whatever. Let's say they score that each team scores 60 points in the first, or sorry, yeah, we'll say 35 points in the first quarter. They both score 35, so you're at 70 points. If they keep that pace, they're at 280 basically. They're going to score a ton of points that game. A lot of times the sports book will also give your bet a cash out to where you can say like, okay, like, yeah, this is probably going to hit. I can cash out for some profit, not all profit. Sometimes I'll take those as well because, hey, some money's better than nothing, especially if I bet it really big. It's like, hey, I don't want to sweat it out at this point because, like it is a game of runs, everything kind of corrects itself. That first quarter, they score a lot. That second quarter, obviously, there's going to probably be some coaching adjustments to focus a little bit more on the defense. So, I mean, there is that. And then just general strategy is probably just, kind of watch it. And I pay attention to, if I'm going to live bet, I'm going to pay attention to the original line, definitely, because I don't want to I don't want to give myself a more difficult task. Like if the original line is 3, and the team I bet on is favored by 3, and then live bet they'd be favored by 7. I'm not going to touch that at that point because it's become more difficult than it originally was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make sense. And speaking of cash outs, you actually told me you wanted to talk about that Vegas bet
Yeah.
because Aaron put a bet on back in October on the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup.
Right before the NHL season started. So yeah, right around then anyway.
And then I thought you jinxed it by saying live on the podcast when Vegas was up 3-1 on Minnesota. He said when they advanced and they lost round. 2 straight. We saw Game 7. They got past it though, and then they were tied up with Colorado. You actually used that strategy to your advantage, right?
Yeah. Vegas was almost beaten in that series. I almost had, I mean, it was a 2-0.
They were up 2-0. Yeah.
2-0. Yeah. It was a 2-0 series, and they almost won Game 3. They were up a goal with like 6 minutes left, and then Vegas scored 2 goals in the span of like a minute, flipped the whole series. They were down 2-1. They were, and then they basically won the series 4. They won 4 straight. Those odds, obviously the live bet in series and playoff series also changes. It was like you could have bet Vegas plus 310 after those first 2 games, to win the series basically. But they were up 3 games to 2. Colorado was still a really good team, very respectable team. I said, I think on the last show, basically, I said that probably whoever wins that series will probably win the Stanley Cup. So at this point, since the Golden Knights have advanced, I think they smoke the Canadians, and then they'll probably beat the Lightning or Islanders anyway in the Stanley Cup finals. I do think they will win at this point, but I did get a cash out option that I was satisfied with. I think I only put like $20 on it. I cashed out for like $70. So I made,
that's nice.
I made, $50 off of it. If they do win, I would have made obviously more, but the thing is, it was better than 100% profit, and there was still the uncertainty. I mean, hockey's that game where we saw in Game 3, it can change in that moment. Any sport can change in a moment. And I was more than satisfied to take that and then just keep betting that $50 at that point. But it's those futures bets, and that's why I do have a theory of, hey, it wasn't a bad bet. It might have been a bad cash out, but I still profited off of it. Even if Vegas doesn't win, let's say they get swept by the Canadians in this next round here, it was still a good bet because I still profited off of it. There's just those options where it's like it might have been a bad cash out, it might have been a great cash out. We won't know until it's all said and done. But either way, it wasn't a bad bet to make. And that's most bets because you see those runs in basketball. You take a team that's favored by 3 points, they go up 10. Usually you can cash out for profit right there. But then the other team comes back and puts a 20-point run on them, and then they win. It doesn't mean it was a bad bet necessarily. So there's a lot of, I guess, different values in that as well too. There's a lot of different strategies, and it's you kind of just have to use your head. You have to pay attention where, okay, the Suns are playing the Nuggets, for example. The Suns went up big, but their best player is hurt. Or like, let's say, I guess better example, the Spurs played the Warriors in 2017 in the Western Conference Finals. Game 1, the Spurs got off to the run. They were looking like they were going to upset them game 1, and then Zaza Pachulia put his foot under Kawhi. Kawhi's hurt. The series is over at that point, kind of thing. So, just depends, I guess, on what you're looking at. Depends on the situation, but sometimes those cash outs are good options.
And especially hockey too, because a lot of people will go to NBA and say that regular season doesn't matter, doesn't mean a thing. Same thing with hockey, man. Regular season means nothing because you can get a hot goalie in the playoffs, and it doesn't matter if you're an 8 seed, a 7 seed, because the most important thing in hockey is to stop the puck. And one guy can affect the entire outcome of a series as a goalie because he just gets hot at the right time. So you never know with hockey. Golden Knights, probably a better team than Canadians. Wouldn't shock me if Canadians swept them, just because that's how hockey works. There's so much parity in the NHL, and we talked about too. I think that we're starting to see that with the NBA minus Brooklyn, but they don't have a big three right now, of course, because James Harden is hurt. He's not playing on Sunday either against the Bucks. So, but no, I mean, if you make a profit, it's a good bet, right? Even if the Knights go on and they win the Stanley Cup, you still made a profit on a $20 bet. They got you to 70. So it's not a bad decision. It also shows you too that you're responsible with betting. Like you realize, okay, let's get out while I'm ahead, because there's so much uncertainty when it comes to, we can see 14 more games from the Golden Knights, and are they going to come out on top, or is it's not for sure. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. U.S. Open is this weekend. Another golf major. It seems like golf majors are like every other weekend now. Like that's how I felt. Like we just talked about the Masters was back in April. It wasn't too far. U.S. Open.
And the Masters were also in November too.
Yeah. So it's like I'm all for it. Like, you don't screw 4 majors. Just get to 8 majors a year. I'm fine with that. U.S. Open should be a fun one. Golf has been. Obviously, without Tiger, it's tougher because Tiger was such a not just a great golfer, but also just a social presence where he drew ticket sales like crazy. But there's a lot of great golfers in the world right now. Dustin Johnson's a popular one. Obviously, John Rahm is really good. But I think the most fun story is really the rivalry between Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau, where Bryson too, when it comes to Aaron and me, Bryson's my guy. I love that guy, and you hate him.
I hate Brooks. I'm not a Brooks guy.
You just hate Bryson.
I'm a Brooks guy in this situation. Yeah, it's been entertaining, but and even Brooks said the rivalry is great for the sport. When you don't have that Tiger Woods option necessarily. I mean, you have a dozen guys who are really, really good, who can win any weekend, but it's still the thing is, all of these guys grew up watching Tiger for the most part. And they became better golfers because of that, inspiration. It's kind of like Michael Jordan made the game of basketball better, than Kobe Bryant made the game of basketball better. LeBron James is going to make the game of basketball better. Love or hate any of those guys, they're making the game better. They're improving the game. I think Bryson DeChambeau is also improving the game, even though, I disagree with a lot of his antics. I mean, he's obviously very focused on how far he can drive the ball. He's focused on his weightlifting, things like that. Either way, I think he's an exciting player. I still respect the hell out of him, even though I find him annoying. But this rivalry is great. I mean, it's the same thing that you see in UFC or you saw in boxing a long time ago. Muhammad Ali used to be this big trash talker, and other boxers would be like, "What the hell did I do to you?" Like, I just,
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, it made enough people either hate Muhammad Ali or like Muhammad Ali, sold a bunch of tickets. Conor McGregor in UFC runs his mouth left and right, gets into legal trouble, retires, unretires, retires again, unretires again, runs a whiskey company, bashes this person, bashes that person. Um, Conor McGregor, actually, you've kind of seen him settle down a little bit. His last fight against Dustin Poirier, I probably butchered his name there. His last fight, like, he lost and it was a rematch, and he just showed a lot of respect to his opponent there. But the thing is, if he's going to be, Conor McGregor, the bad boy, people are going to love him or hate him, and then they're going to
Hmm.
sell more tickets. They're going to sell more pay-per-view. He was great for the sport. Bryson and Brooks, I mean, they're golfers. They're not fighters, but here they are. Brooks is in an interview and Bryson walks by and he's like, Brooks is just like, I lost my train of thought. I had to listen to that fucking bullshit walk by. Jesus fucking Christ, like, pardon the F words. I don't even think we have a bleeper here on this, but
Oh, we don't need one. We're
I
not we're
guess,
not regulated by the FCC.
yeah,
So
it's just a quote. I mean, I'm not saying it. That was what Brooks said, basically. And then Bryson is talking about how he lives rent free in Brooks Head. Actually, so for the U.S. Open, the only head-to-head matchup right now that's available to bet is Bryson versus Brooks.
yep.
So
And
DraftKings is leaning into it too.
I want to
So
jump in really quick too, because like I think everybody should lean into this because so you've seen Happy Gilmore, right?
yeah,
Okay. And what made that movie so great was the back and forth between Happy Gilmore and Shooter McGavin. Shooter was this guy that was
a
on the
gentleman.
course. He was a gentleman. He was an asshole, of course, but on the
Yeah,
course, he played golf the right way, right? He respected the game. He did all the rules. And this guy, Happy Gilmore, comes in. He's not dressed nice. He's swearing on the course. He's
people are
punching
throwing beach balls.
patrons,
People are
right?
getting their chests signed by him, old ladies.
Yeah, and Shooter looks at Happy as like, you're disrespecting the game that I love, and he talks to the commissioner and saying he's ruining the game. The commissioner's response was he's selling tickets. He's making more fans of golf. And when it comes to anything in the world, when it comes to like movies or books or TV shows, what is one constant? There's always a protagonist and an antagonist, right? Good versus evil. And I'm a big believer when it comes to sports that first off, it's entertainment. That's why we watch it. Is entertainment first. And I think every sport needs a villain. You need a guy to root against, and you need a guy to root for. And that's why I'm a big pro wrestling fan. And I always apply that to everything because there's always a good guy versus a bad guy. And we've seen it in the NBA the last few years. When LeBron went to Miami, it was great for the league because everybody hated him. He was a bad guy, and everybody wanted to watch Miami lose. And it's the same thing with Golden State when they signed Kevin Durant. They became the heels of the NBA. Everybody wanted to see them lose. Tom Brady in the NFL, everybody wants to see him lose because he wins all the freaking time. So I think it's great for golf that they finally have like two people that genuinely despise each other. That's great TV. It's great entertainment, and it's also genuine because we believe that they don't like each other, and they're going back and forth on Twitter. They're going back and forth talking about the match when DeChambeau's team with the Rodgers and Brooks Koepka just saying like, "Oh God, that sucks for you," and things like
Yeah.
that. And I think the PGA should capitalize on every opportunity that they have. They should create like a hype video coming in the U.S. Open. They should
Put them in pairings. Put them in opening
yeah,
day pairings. Yeah.
play them together and mic them up. Like that just makes golf so much more fun. And the reason why I like Bryson DeChambeau so much is because he's just different. Like, and he does kind of piss people off. I've always been kind of like a rebel in my life, doing things my own way. And I love seeing Brooks Koepka get pissed off at Bryson DeChambeau taking 5 minutes to make a putt. When he mentioned after that tournament, he only takes 15 seconds and he's doing fine. And DeChambeau's looking over his notes and like taking forever to play. It's like, hurry up, man. Like, I think golf has a opportunity here to really create something big with these two guys. And the best part too is they're both good golfers. and they're
Yeah.
both exciting to watch. You watch Koepka, he's just a technician on the course, and DeChambeau, of course, is going to drive the ball really far, and both of those are fun to watch.
Yeah, that's the thing is golf is a very universal sport. It's kind of like your track and field or your swimming and diving where it's like your opponent does well and you're still rooting for it. It's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you swim a race against Michael Phelps and he smokes you out of the water, no pun intended. Um, you're probably patting him on the back after and being like, yeah, good job. You're not, you're kind of more playing against yourself in a way. And that's how the game is set up. You're not really playing against other, obviously you want to have a better score, but because of this now maybe not being universal. I mean, you're seeing a lot on social media of people calling Bryson Brooksy and Brooksy's getting involved with it and sending them beer. It's great. It's absolutely great. And this rivalry actually goes back further than that interview too. And you
Yeah.
kind of mentioned and hinted at it. It started with, so basically Brooks said Bryson plays really slow, and Bryson approached Brooks' caddy at a driving range before one tournament or something like that, and said like, "Hey, if your golfer has a problem with me, like have him say it to my face." And Brooks was like, "Fine," and went right up to Bryson's face and was like, "Yeah, you play slow, pick it up," kind of thing. And the thing I don't like about Bryson really is just I think he's annoying. Like I said, I do think he's good for the game. I think he's very tries to be this like branded guy. He's always posting videos of his plane and his super nice car on his Instagram, and he's all about this journey to increase his swing speed, things like that. I mean, that's at the end of the day, I can get over it. When he does win, I can still appreciate the greatness he puts on the course when he does. I mean, obviously, he can't do it every weekend, but like I said, I mean, I think that is great for the sport, and that's part of the reason I'm not a huge Brooks fan either. Is Brooks whines a lot after the PGA Championship? He was talking about how the fans were dinging him, and he was already playing injured, and this and that. If he would have won, he probably wouldn't have said anything. I mean, let's be honest. So, but there is a lot of drama on the PGA Tour that kind of just like gets swept under the rug because it is golf. A lot of guys hate Patrick Reed. Kevin Kistner at one point said his college teammates probably wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. Like that doesn't happen in NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's not like Montrezl Harrell, for example. He leaves the Clippers, goes to the Lakers. He's not like Kawhi's a guy that nobody can get along with. I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. Like he wouldn't say that. He just said like I was unwanted there. But golf, they're all independent contractors, so it doesn't matter. They can just speak their mind and they can bring that up. And yeah, I think that should be flaunted, I guess, as much as it possibly can.
Absolutely, because drama is it's great. Like we want drama, we crave drama in everything that we look forward to with TV shows, movies, and our sports. And sports should be drama. And like you mentioned with Brooks Koepka, I love seeing him be a drama queen sometimes. Not because I necessarily agree with that. I kind of dislike it. I think it's annoying, but it also too it makes you like, oh man, I want to. This guy is such a drama. It's like LeBron James, like. LeBron James, I like LeBron, but he's a freaking drama queen. He talk about like, oh, these shoulders are so big, I'm going to carry this team, like things like that, or getting hit, getting poked in the eye and on the floor for 10 minutes, like things like that. But they add to the excitement as far as now fans are rooting against this guy, but it is putting more eyes on them because they're rooting for them to lose, and then it's creating more fans of their rivals. So I want to see more rivals like this. It's like, I want to see Rory go at it with Dustin Johnson. I want to see Jordan Spieth go at it with John Rahm. I probably won't see a lot of that because of most of that. I would say primarily most of the golfers are pretty soft-spoken guys. But, Dustin has some charisma, and so does Brooks, obviously. So does Bryson. Ricky Fowler is a guy I wish was a little bit better, won a little bit more tournaments because he has a lot of spunk and a lot of charisma. But I think golf is moving forward in a really good direction. And U.S. Open, I'm excited for this weekend. You got any other picks you're looking for? Any other guys you're looking to pop?
I'll probably look into the head-to-heads a little bit most for this. It's the U.S. Open is supposed to be a course that obviously plays tough. It's one of the highest scoring average tournaments usually each year because they make the courses super tough. It's a longer course too. I think it was about 7,600, I believe. Kind of as a sleeper, just kind of looking at, I guess, a couple different options. I kind of like Abraham Answer. Dude's never won on the PGA, which is kind of problematic because usually the guys who win majors have won at some other point. So I mean, he's a sleeper. He does well at that distance. I guess the other guy I like is, I guess, a heavy sleeper is Joel Damon. I think he's like plus 15,000 or plus 25,000 or something like that. He's not going to win, but he does well at that distance. He won at that distance a little bit earlier this year. He's another guy, just kind of off topic here a little bit. He's another guy who has a rivalry. He was playing with Sung Kang at one day, and Kang went out of bounds, or he went into like a lateral hazard. So he got a drop, and there was heavy disagreement about where they dropped. They literally slowed up the course. They had to let other golfers play through. They called the rules official out. Kang was wanting to drop here, and then he's like, no, there's no way that ball didn't go down that hill kind of thing. He's like, you have to drop over there. And he's like, well, what if I drop here? And he's like, no, that gives you even better positioning kind of thing. So like, and that's an interview, like that's easily accessible kind of thing. So there are those rivalries in golf. A lot of the times it's just those, lesser known guys or guys who don't really win a lot, but kind of like him as a heavy sleeper. If I was betting, for the lottery ticket, the Phil Mickelson 200-1 at the PGA Championship, I do like his payout anyway. I actually liked Harris.
You like taking a flyer on Mickelson?
Oh, I mean, I would have at the PGA Championship.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet him again. I actually really liked Harris English for this tournament, but it looks like he might be winning this tournament now. It looks like he's the favorite live for the Palmetto Championship that's going on right now. He won in Hawaii at the same distance, and I kind of had like this, sometimes you get those psychic visions when you bet sports. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of had this like Harris English is going to bounce back because he's been really buns for the last couple months, and then now he's apparently about to win this tournament. I don't like a guy to win back-to-back weekends, so other guy I'll eyeball is Patrick Cantlay because he bounced back from an injury a while ago and seems like he's golfing well. He won the Memorial Tournament in a playoff last week. He's putting well. He'd probably be my betting favorite, if that makes sense. And I'd probably take him on a head-to-head. Looks like betting odds wise on DraftKings, he's pretty similar to Webb Simpson. Webb Simpson's usually a shorter course guy. Patrick Cantlay is also usually a shorter course guy, but he has shown that he can do well at these longer courses too, which I don't think Webb Simpson's going to be able to keep up. So if that's a head-to-head option, that's probably what I'd like the most, but I'm going to have to see those books come out with other lines than Bryson versus Brooks, because the thing is Bryson does well at longer courses. Brooks does well at longer courses. I don't want to touch it. I could see that going either way. So I'm not going to get trapped into that one.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of people will though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the one to watch. I mean, that's probably where Vegas is going to make a lot of their money, is because they're both minus money. So, I mean, you're not getting either of them at plus money, and you're probably going to get a lot of wager on that, especially it being a major tournament. So, but it makes sense. It's the time to do it. I mean, they're both playing relatively well. I mean, Bryson's been a little bit shakier recently. I mean, when he controls the drive and he's driving par fours, he's driving the greens, he's probably going to be up there in that tournament. I mean, just because he doesn't putt well, doesn't chip well all the time, if he's getting the ball that far, it's going to work out more times than not. But Brooks is also more polished, I guess, across the board, to where, okay, he didn't get his driver there, but he can stick his next shot pretty close. So they're two slightly different games, but they both do well at long courses. So I'm not going to touch it.
For sure. Great stuff, man. Killing it on the golf. Your analysis is top notch. I love it. So golf U.S. Open this weekend, a lot of stuff to bet on there. NBA playoffs still going on. Quick rundown. I got the Nets -2. I have the under on the Bucks team line at 113.5. I got the Nuggets +3.5 tonight. And then I have the Hawks covering this +3 on Monday night. Aaron is going the other way. He's taking the Sixers -3. And Clippers Jazz, we're still not sure on. We'll post some picks on our Facebook page throughout the week as well. So keep following us, keep winning money with us, and just get into sports betting because it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, guys and gals.
See you next time. I think we're all good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Catch us again for our next episode. 4 episodes in. Let's keep going strong.